but looking forward to this phase of the comprehensive plan update for Reston. This was my first board matter on the Board of Supervisors to ask for this study and update. And there have been a lot of folks put a lot of time, a lot of good work into this, and pleased that this is going to be presented here today, at least a summary of where we are. But this is starting a very important time in the comp plan review update, and that's the public engagement time this fall. So anyway, really appreciate everybody. Is it? Okay, good. All right. So thanks. And St. Clair, I think you're running the show today.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So good morning, everybody. I'm St. Clair Williams with the Department of Planning and Development. Along with me is also Chris Caperton, Deputy Director of the Department of Planning and Development. So this morning, we're going to be giving you a briefing on the current Reston Comprehensive Plan Amendment process from beginning to where we are now. We're going to give you an overview of the highlights or key changes in the proposed text or proposed recommendations. And then we're going to talk about kind of the next steps in the process. And then we're going to allow times for any questions from anybody in attendance. So the Reston study, Reston Comprehensive Plan process was authorized back in 2020. It was authorized to evaluate how new development might impact Reston residents, impact public facilities, and provide an opportunity to address growth-related issues within Reston. With over 30 rezonings approved in Reston since the last comprehensive plan amendment in 2015, many in the community expressed concerns with how new development might impact, existing Reston residents, public facilities, and the quality of new development and design. So it was thought that this study would provide the opportunity to address these and other growth-related issues. Just to give you some basic background on the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is the primary resource of county staff, the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, and other decision makers for evaluating land use applications and making policy decisions about the county's built and natural environment. The comprehensive plan describes a community's land use vision, priorities, and goal. Ideally, it represents a full spectrum of the community, young and old, renters and homeowners, minority communities, and all income ranges. And the comprehensive plan sets forth areas for the county that are recommended for more development or retention of their existing uses and character, or changes in land use. The plan includes land use recommendations such as mixed use, residential, retail, and the amount of development and the character of development. It also includes design details such as building height, open space networks, and street networks. So for this current process, a 31-member community task force was appointed by the Hunter Middle District Supervisor, actually in March of 2020. The task force meetings were originally scheduled to kick off in March, but of course, we were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result of that, we had to scramble to find an alternative format for hosting the task force meetings. And as a result, the task force meetings began in May of 2020, and all of the full task force meetings and subcommittee meetings were all hosted on a virtual platform. So that was definitely a new thing for this process. I think we were, as far as comprehensive plan amendments, might have been the first one that went to the virtual platform for the task force meetings. So the task force was comprised of residents representing neighborhood and community organizations, landowners, and representatives from businesses, from business associations. The task force and county staff worked closely to discuss and analyze potential changes to the comprehensive plan for Reston, again, which guides future planning and land use decisions for the area. The full task force held 58 public meetings between May 2020 and August 2022. The task force in their process formed subcommittees to review and update draft proposed recommendations or text for the Reston Comprehensive Plan. And county staff from multiple agencies collaborated with the task force to further develop text for the comprehensive plan. Any differences between task force and staff recommendations will be highlighted in the staff report. So the proposed text includes revised language for plan elements that are existing in the currently adopted plan. As you can see on the slide, the current slide. We're going to provide an overview of the highlights and key changes proposed for each of those elements. And then the proposed text also introduces new plan language for 3 new plan elements or chapters for the Reston plan. And those chapters are community health, equity, and economic development. So we'll also provide an overview of the highlights for those chapters as well. So moving into the chapters that are included in the proposed text, we'll start with the planning principles. So many may know when the planned community of Reston was founded by Robert E. Simon in 1964, he established 7 guiding principles for developments in Reston. Over time, those guiding principles were expanded to 10 principles. And with the current proposed text, 2 new principles are being introduced to the planning principles to address community health and equity in Reston. Overall, the planning principles were updated to ensure the planning principles will continue to guide Reston development and result in developments that are harmonious with the surrounding neighborhoods. Then we'll get into the land use recommendations. The task force review and proposed amendments are intended to extend the legacy of outstanding new town planning in Reston and to ensure that the development for potential for Reston, the infrastructure, and the environment are all in balance. The land use recommendations for the village centers, and specifically Hunter Woods, South Lakes, and North Point, were reviewed to consider whether future development proposals might require comprehensive plan amendments. And as a result, for the village centers, the proposals for existing residential located adjacent to non-residential areas to remain unchanged. And any proposals for new housing in the non-residential areas will require an amendment to the comprehensive plan before consideration. Continuing with land use, the recommendations for the Town Center North non-TOD district, which is jointly owned by Fairfax County and Nova, were also reviewed. And as a result, the proposed text recommends that all of the residential development is assigned to blocks 2, 4, and 6. And those are the blocks that are owned by Innova. The recommendations also recommend a maximum of 1,000 dwelling units, which is about 20 dwelling units per acre, and 150,000 square feet of non-residential development for blocks 2, 4, and 6. And then for blocks 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 9, which are owned by the county, the recommendations are for the area to be reserved for civic uses with adequate ancillary retail. For the eastern section between the TOD district and the proposed extension of South Lakes Drive and north of the Dulles Toll Road section, the proposed language adds a development option to permit residential development up to a 1.0 FAR. And for the Rolling Clark Place residential mixed use section, the proposed language would allow the provision of public uses to satisfy the required 25% non-residential uses, which are required on the 2 parcels located south of the Dulles Toll Road, which are currently planned for residential mixed use development with a total of 75% residential and 25% non-residential. The next chapter is the transportation chapter. The proposed updates to transportation section include expanding the vision for a multimodal transportation system that provides safe, efficient, attractive, and dependable travel options in an equitable way for all current and future residents, employees, and visitors. Also updating the transportation area-wide guidance, adding placemaking guidance, modifying the local network in the TSAs, and the proposed changes also include the addition of 7 planning principles. We won't go into details on those, but those are listed in the proposed text. The proposed updates to the housing recommendations for Reston seek to maintain and preserve all existing market and committed affordable housing, increase the production of new affordable housing units, especially in the mixed use areas in the transit station areas, encourage provisions of affordable housing for vulnerable populations, and affordable housing for seniors. Within the Reston TSAs, the proposed language recommends a minimum of 12% of residential units as affordable housing, consisting of both affordable dwelling units and workforce dwelling units. For proposals at or above a 1.0 FAR, an increased proportion of affordable housing expected to be provided as development intensities increase on a sliding scale basis. Provided on this slide is a table showing the average median income or AMI targets for rental workforce dwelling units countywide within the Reston TSAs and in the Reston non-TSA areas. The draft language includes an update to the AMI target for rental workforce dwelling units within the Reston TSAs. As you can see, it's highlighted, and it recommends that 6% of the total units be targeted to the 71 to 80% AMI, 3% to the 61 to 70% AMI, and 3% to the up to 60% AMI, again, for a total of 12% WDUs. Now, the current countywide policy is 4% for the 71 to 80 AMI, 2% to the 60 to 70 AMI, and 2% up to 60% AMI. So this is a change from the countywide policy. For areas outside of the rest of non-TSA areas, the proposal is to be consistent with the countywide policy. Moving on to parks and open space. The proposed amendments seek to preserve the natural features, including forests, lakes, and stream valleys, provide consistent quality of parks, recreation and open space for all residents and employees at Reston, regardless of age, race, and income levels, plan for a variety of recreation experiences to serve all ages, backgrounds, interests, and abilities, and to meet the needs of the culturally and economically diverse Reston community. It also provides for indoor and outdoor cultural activities, provides for community gathering spaces, and establishes inclusive and equitable community engagement to inform and guide planning for parks, recreation, and open spaces. The task force recommendations of park and space also proposes to remove references to parks previously referenced in the Reston plan, specifically Lake Fairfax, Stratton Woods, and Fruit Factory, because they are outside of the Reston boundary. The proposed language also revises the athletic field guidance for the Reston TSAs to recommend that based on the population needs in the TSAs, as determined by the Fairfax County Park Authority, capacity equivalent to at least 12 athletic fields should be provided in close proximity, including one in or nearby each of the 3 transit station areas through development contributions of land, funds, new facilities, and improvements to increase the capacity at existing facilities. Moving on to environmental stewardship. The recommendation, they specify an environmentally related vision and planning principles expected to guide development in Reston, introduces the concept of biophilia and the certification of Reston as a biophilic community, emphasizing the benefits and necessity of human interaction with nature, and offers insight into the various environmental issues germane to the community, describes challenges facing the community, and other specific recommendations to address Reston's challenges. The draft language addresses the following topics: community design and including ecosystem health and resiliency, sustainable landscapes, including soils, vegetation, and invasive plant species, watersheds, water resources, that includes wetlands, streams and buffer areas, and lakes and ponds, stormwater management, and also salt management, air and climate, and sustainability, which includes green buildings, green neighborhoods, noise, lighting, electrical vehicle charging, and bird-friendly design. Moving on to heritage resources, language is added regarding the reconnaissance level architectural survey that was conducted by the Virginia Department of Historic Resources in 2019. This survey included buildings constructed between 1961 and 1978, which were the prime development years for Reston. In addition, a map was added in the text identifying the locations of previous survey efforts. Language was also added regarding the recognition of the Association Drive campus as a heritage resource. This campus is significant in community planning and development as part of Robert Simon's original plan for Reston. And given the importance of the office park complex, the draft recommendations include consideration of preservation and or adaptive reuse with any potential development within the campus. The inventory of historic sites map was also updated to include the United States Geological Survey building, now listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Moving on to public facilities. Language was added to ensure that the current and planned public facilities will adhere to the principles identified in the comprehensive plan, including participation in decision-making, addressing the housing needs of all ages and incomes, ensuring environmental sustainability, and using green technology in facilities. Public facilities addressed in the plan was expanded to include law enforcement, libraries, health and human services, housing and facilities for homeless populations, public recreational and entertainment facilities, water and sewer, and solid waste and recycling. The next chapter is public art. The public art recommendations in the adopted plan were updated to ensure that developers coordinate public art projects with public art Reston early in the design process, that public art is successfully integrated into development proposals, and to ensure that there is transparency in the public art Reston review process. The next chapter is community health, which again, community health is a new chapter for the Reston plan. The proposed community health recommendations aim to ensure planning and development in Reston prioritizes achieving health equity. The objectives for the community health section of the plan are intended to benefit the health of everyone in Reston, regardless of race, income, age, immigration status, or any other measure. The objectives for community health are provided in 5 interrelated subcategories, which are healthcare and service, active living, food systems, climate health, green infrastructure and healthy buildings, and social cohesion. Equity. Equity is also a new chapter to the Reston Comprehensive Plan. The chapter builds on the concepts outlined in Fairfax County's One Fairfax social and racial equity policy, which was adopted by the Board of Supervisors in November of 2017. This policy commits the Board of Supervisors to consider equity in decision-making and in development and delivery of future policies, programs, and services. The proposed equity recommendations are intended to continue Reston's longstanding commitment to removing barriers that perpetuate injustice in our society and unite Reston around a shared set of goals for its future, and to use planning to build a more inclusive economy and connect people to opportunity. And then there's economic development. Again, this is a new chapter to the comprehensive plan. The chapter is consistent with the current Fairfax County policy plan for economic development. The economic development recommendations identified as necessary to support land use decisions in the plan are grouped together, and the recommendations identified as aspirational and which apply to other Fairfax County organizations are also grouped together. The aspirational recommendations would not be required to be addressed as part of individual land use decisions. So I think that covers all of the chapters within the proposed text at this time. So kind of getting into next steps, this presentation is kind of like the kickoff of our community engagement process. We have community engagement meetings, which would be kicking off next week. There will be both virtual and in-person meetings, and those meetings will be ongoing through the rest of September and into October. We also will have a public comment window, an opportunity for people to provide comments, and that window will be open through October 28th. The current schedule, staff report is scheduled to be published end of September. However, we will be continuing taking comments, and updates can be provided based on comments received from the community and others. As of right now, the tentative public hearing dates, we're looking at November 2nd, 2022 for a Planning Commission public hearing, and December 6th, 2022 for a Board of Supervisors public hearing. Again, those dates are tentative at this point. So with that, I think that wraps up our kind of briefing, and I will now open up to any questions on any information that's been provided. Thank you.
St. Clair, thank you for that. And how do you want to run this part?
Sure.
See if people have raised their hands.
I can just, we'll start with Fatima, if that's okay with you, since you were on first. If you have any questions you wanted to kick off with.
Hi, thanks for organizing this. So where did the task force end on urn density? And like, what was the final discussion on that?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. We actually, I realized this wasn't in the presentation. Discussions continue on the urn density concept. Some of it's going to be, I expect, interactive during the public engagement process. There may be some elements of either the task force proposal or other elements that are identified by members of the community that perhaps wouldn't be expected of every application, but frankly, maybe in some combination could be an urn density, set of urn density criteria. The idea, and this is a new idea that was not included in the task force recommendation, but a subgroup continues to look at that as part of the task force. The idea would be that for developers to get to some level of density in the comp plan, they would need to earn it in the sense of addressing criteria that have been discussed, but yet no consensus has emerged around what those criteria would be.
Okay, we can go to the next person, and if I have more, we can maybe circle around.
Okay, Michael O'Connell has his, from the patch, has his hand up, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I had my own question, but I also wanted to follow up on the density, urn density. Yeah, I know that at the final meeting, that was something that was pushed into the public comment section, and the county was going to be making, or county staff was going to be sort of crafting that, I guess. I mean, will there be an urn density part of the comprehensive plan?
Well, actually, it was pushed to a subgroup of the task force, which will be meeting likely this month to come back with any recommendations. So, so it's still one element that's out there. I don't know if you could say one way or the other if it's going to be part of the ultimate recommendation at the Planning Commission or from staff. Ultimately when it gets to the Board of Supervisors, but there may be there may be recommendations out there that, again, perhaps are better as part of a list of potential community benefits than to be expected of every development application. So those discussions continue, and frankly, that would be something I would be looking for more public input as well.
The other question I had was, I know that the golf courses were not part of the task force's purview. This is not going to be part of this review of the comprehensive plan for Reston. But did they figure into other areas such as your open space calculations?
Good question. I don't know. St. Clair, do you know if those? I mean, it's basically the golf courses were not part of this review. I said from the get-go that those are being discussed separately, not part of this comprehensive plan update. And I'm not sure about any Reston-wide open space calculations, if that was.
Yeah, I was gonna say again, yes, no land use change or anything proposed for the golf courses. At this point, I don't think there were any changes to any of the open space calculations.
Right.
So again, there have been no changes with that at this point.
Yeah, the only reason I ask is I know that there were discussions about Lake Fairfax and other open space areas for that were part of this discussion, and I was just wondering, just as I said, recognizing that these weren't formally part of, we're going to plan those, but if they at all affected any of the calculations. I think that's probably what you answered. So I will pass that on to anybody else who has a question.
Marcia, would you like, do you have questions?
I do. This is can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a massive amount of information. True, it's a Bible of Reston. It's the new Bible of Reston, you call it. As reporters, would you please help us out and give us the 5 high-level items you want readers not to be drowned in the information, please?
Yeah, Marcia, let me take a shot at this. And this is something Commissioner Carter and I have talked about as well, that after coming out of the weeds and sort of looking at the forest. First of all, I think what this does is this is a proposed comprehensive plan or a plan update for all of Reston. Basically, previous comprehensive plan studies and task forces have focused on part of Reston. This is one Reston. This is all of Reston. So I would say that's number one. This is the complete Reston proposed comprehensive plan. Second, I would say the equity and, this will be 2 and 3, Marcia. Equity and community health chapters would be the first such chapters in a comprehensive plan anywhere in Fairfax County. Community health, clearly, well, it's on a lot of our minds, I guess, a lot of folks' minds during the pandemic. But looking at the recommendations, it's much more than just a post-pandemic recommendation. It really does go into very important community issues about healthy food access, about active living, really looking at all the different elements and importance of community health in Reston, and perhaps could be at least a starting point for some countywide or plan language for other parts of Fairfax County. The other one that I would point out is the equity chapter. This is certainly, as St. Clair mentioned, with the One Fairfax policy, this is really the first opportunity we have to see how equity in a comprehensive planning framework could work. I think that Reston is a particularly appropriate community for which to apply equity principles in a comprehensive plan. As we all know, Reston was the first open community in the Commonwealth of Virginia back in the 1960s. So this is very consistent, really all the way back to Reston's founding. So those are at least three, Marcia.
Those are good. Those are good. I have a follow-on question. You're mentioning the community health, the equity. I'm almost hearing from you that I feel that you are predicting board matters on the county level of the similar topics being brought forward. Am I correct?
Well, I guess there are a couple of thoughts, Marcia, that I'll share with that. First of all, I do expect there to be updates both countywide on some of these topics. The countywide policy plan and the comprehensive plan, it is updated on a rolling basis. So I would expect, and I do know staff is actively looking at updating the policy plan, both in terms of community health and equity. So I do look forward to that. The other piece that I guess is maybe important for folks to understand the context of this. I do expect there may be follow-on motions, both at the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, because the comprehensive plan is a powerful tool, but it's not the only tool that we have in Fairfax County to achieve these goals and address the issues that I know have been widely discussed, not just in the task force process, but within the community. So I would be, and I will be listening through the public engagement process for ideas that maybe aren't exactly comprehensive plan issues, but need to be addressed nonetheless. And that'll be a part of this process too.
I have two more short questions. You being a resident of Reston, which part of this excites you personally most?
I personally, I think the equity part does, and community health. I think those two, having Reston be the first to try to figure this out and how to incorporate it into a comprehensive plan, I find that actually really challenging, but also exciting. There's a lot of potential there.
Okay. Well, I take back my last question because you answered it in that. So thank you very much.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
I had a question. So just sort of so I understand this, what this task force review is looking at is the PRC for Reston, correct?
Actually, much more than that. And that's a great question, Michael. PRC is a zoning district, and this is looking at a higher level at the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
And the properties in Reston that are in the PRC are definitely part of this comprehensive plan proposal, but there's a lot more.
You include other things that aren't in the PRC that are in Reston, for example, Town Center.
Exactly, and all along, around the metro stations, there's a lot of land zoned to other districts, including a good amount of industrial land and other zones. So yes, this is part of the one Reston distinction. It is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay. So I guess it's sort of this is similar to Marcia's question. So since it is expansive beyond the PRC, these are amendments to the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan. Something that's adopted here is, a developer in Springfield or another part of the county would be able to utilize or apply, or
No.
What are the limitations of it, I guess?
Yeah, this is geographically restricted to Reston. So now, granted, there's been some discussion about the boundary in the sense of on the west and southwestern portion, some of the the land by the future Herndon Metro Station, and to the west of that, some folks on the task force said, well, you know, that's not traditionally been Reston, and that's okay. But it's that little piece is part of the current Reston comprehensive plan. So that was part of this review. But Michael, what you're talking about is a good question, because this is specific to Reston, but it's also specific to all of Reston, not just the PRC areas.
Okay, well, and I understand with the comprehensive plan, if there's a certain issue, that if there's a difference between something in the Reston plan and in the comprehensive plan, that particular to Reston, that would be the sort of the guiding principle.
That's right, and you know, as I mentioned earlier, there are countywide policy plan elements in the comprehensive plan. Those do apply countywide, but typically where there are area-specific recommendations in the comprehensive plan or guidance in the comprehensive plan, that takes precedent. So this really is well, it's a Reston-focused document.
Okay, and my final question is, again, when you started this, one of the pieces of information you shared with the task force members was the ultimate build out on Reston at that time. You know, if we built out everything that's already been passed and enacted, this is the population that we would have. Does this substantially change the build out? I mean, is it going to bring, you know, greater density? Is it just sort of going to be the same? You know, is it restricting new development as sort of a counter to keeping overall density less?
Yeah, it makes site-specific changes to density in only a couple of areas, and actually St. Clair mentioned, I think, those in the presentation, whether there is any site-specific land use change recommendations. But it's a more complex answer than that, because one of the things that in looking at the ultimate build out of Reston, there's a lot of planned density in there that may or may not ever be used. So it's important to look at recent history and then to keep an eye going forward on how much of that density is actually put into zoning. Because ultimately, if it's not zoned, it would never be built. So, and we are seeing less than 100% of potential planned density being zoned in recent years. So, and of course, how much density is ultimately zoned is something that is ultimately something that's requested by landowners and then approved by the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. Some of that will be driven by the market, but frankly, some of it will be driven by what's in the comprehensive plan. And there may be landowners that make a calculation on whether or not to move forward with more or less density based on recommendations in the comprehensive plan. You'll need to, I think, hear from perhaps members of the task force that worked a lot on this issue, you know, when we get to the public information and engagement sessions, to get their views on it, because there are a number of different thoughts on this.
All right, thank you.
I have one question, because I don't understand when you were mentioning, I was a few moments late to the meeting, maybe you said it, so I apologize. I don't understand the area that you were talking about near the Herndon Metro. That's a watery area where the designation is not so clear. What geographical, what streets are we talking about?
Monroe.
I was gonna say it's the, I guess it's the Herndon Monroe Metro Station area.
Yes.
So that is the area. I guess there was some that questioned exactly how far along that western area does the Reston boundary extend.
Why,
So
why aren't you going with the geographical boundaries of the town of Herndon?
Oh, no, that's definitely that way. It's on the north side. This is all on the south side.
Oh, all right.
of-
Okay.
Yeah. No, great question, Marcia, because it is, well, anyway, we can show you a map.
Does that involve that
Show me
woodland
your
area?
map.
Yes, it does involve the wetland.
yes.
The wetland.
And then on the other side of Monroe Street too.
What was just said? I didn't it involves the what?
Basically the wetland area and also on the west side of Monroe Street, although that didn't get a lot of discussion because that's been rezoned and frankly, it's under construction, most of it. So there wasn't a lot of, there wasn't any controversy about that area, but I just noted because I guess the only controversy was there were some people that pointed out, this wasn't part of Reston originally. And so that's all.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
John, do you have, John?
do you have a question? Absolutely.
I'm secondary, but so
No.
something that was a matter of a lot of discussion when the task force process started was arriving at a ceiling, if you will. What if we grew out at all the densities allowed, what number would we come to? Did we come to a number?
Well, it is a calculation.
Recognizing the qualifications of said number.
Yeah, and I think the recommendations or the conclusions of the task force, John, do you want to talk to that a little bit?
110 to 120 is the potential population. Those are estimates.
It's not a
Based
ceiling.
on-
They're not a
They're
ceiling.
not a ceiling. They're not a cap.
So there is no cap.
And they rule on all of Reston, not just the PRC, but all of Reston, the transit corridor, as well as this Herndon Monroe area you're talking about. They're estimates, so there's a lot of formulaic issues to it. It assumes that every parcel doesn't develop at its maximum allowable density by zoning. And that's based on what's happened over the last 60 years.
Well, and that's for a good bit of time going forward, but it does
Yes.
open the door to something that goes beyond that because the zoning process, as you point out, is as a result of requests in many cases by landowners. So
Yes.
you could get up to 120 and those requests could keep on coming.
You could, but the estimate is good because you can assess where you are over time. And so if you were in a case where, okay, wait a minute, we're getting close or we're actually getting over, then you could reassess. But based where we are, we're never going to get, it's going to be a long time.
I'm not worried about this happening in my lifetime. Let's say.
Yes.
But I'm sorry.
Just a moment. Just for clarification for people who are coming on virtually, the reporters on virtually, the person asking the questions is John Levis from The Connection, and the person answering the questions is John Carter, who's our planning commissioner for Hunter Mill District. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't know that. And that really was by way of getting to the question that Michael O'Connell had asked a few minutes ago about the golf courses and open space. If I take, we're at what, 65,000 thereabouts right now. So we're getting up to
70.
Yeah.
okay. So, and we're going up to somewhere 110, 120 conceivably over 20, 30 years, whatever. We need more open space, it strikes me, or we're going down proportionally. Open space is going to shrink with a population that could almost double. And my problem here with exclusion of the discussion of the golf courses is that the golf courses are not open space in the sense that they are available to everybody. They are available to members and people who pay a high price to be out on there. So that's not open space. I know we play the game, it's open space because it's green and it's got grass and stuff, but does that indicate that we need to do something more with regard to the open space? It seems that the process didn't really consider this issue in depth. You kind of walked around it.
Well, yeah.
The task force didn't do it. You didn't walk around.
Yeah, the instruction I gave to the task force was that the golf course question would be dealt with outside of the task task force process. I agree that that there definitely is a need for more open space over time. I would point out that now we don't have a graphic for this, but in Reston Town Center North, the plan for that is changing from what the existing comprehensive plan called for to expand the central green up to about 3.7 acres. And we are actually seeing the creation of open space formerly developed with the end of the old rehab facility, the Inova rehab facility, which is being torn down literally
And that will be open
as we
space.
speak, and that will be open space. So that is an example of creation of new open space. But I don't disagree. I do see a long-term need to ensure that publicly accessible open space, if not publicly owned, and I have my own feelings about that, is very important for Reston's future.
Okay, and that's really what I wanted to get to, is that's kind of an issue that I would hope would still be viewed as open for further discussion in the future.
Yeah,
That was my point, really.
It continues to, yeah.
The health and equity principal add-ons. In principle, I love them. They're right to my sweet spot. I'm just trying to imagine an example of something that comes up on land use. And the question is, does this meet the health principle of Reston? And I'm not quite sure how that you would accomplish that, I guess is the question.
Well, I'll throw out one or two. Certainly, we do already, I think, emphasize active transportation, making sure that there are trail and sidewalk connections from new development. This reinforces that, not just from a community amenity standpoint, but from a community health standpoint. Particularly
giving a grand view of exercise, I see.
Well, yes, and yes, I think it's good for community health. At least that's what the doctors tell us. So as well as ensuring that pedestrian connections are arranged for community amenities. There's a lot of discussion in the task force about grocery stores and about access to grocery stores. That's another one. There's some limitations on how much a county or a comprehensive plan can require or create grocery stores, but in terms of encouraging them, in terms of having that be part of the discussion, and frankly, to basically push that issue a little bit, because we don't want to see food deserts created in Reston. And access to healthy food is such a critical community health issue. And I don't know if there are any others, John. There's a lot of.
Well, the simple one would be expansions of the hospital, which we might think about over the next 30 to 60 years. Expansions of other kinds of health facilities that might be in the village centers or might be in the more industrial areas. That's talking about.
And the way you framed that was equitable health.
Yeah.
It strikes me, and I didn't expect that we could get to a resolution of this kind of a question, but it strikes me that in going forward with this comprehensive plan, you've got two areas you're really going to have to get down and start defining more clearly, and there's going to be considerable discussion about how you review them in the land use reviews, because this is not something that's clearly defined and easy to deal with, I don't think.
Well, you have been listening maybe to DPD staff, because this is the same thing that.
Well, it partly was. I am sympathetic to that, because I looked at that and I said, wow, what would I do with you guys? That's true.
That's right. So you're absolutely right, John. These are things that that systems in some cases don't yet, analytical systems don't yet exist.
We got some work
fully.
to do.
We got some work to do. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Marshall.
Okay. You surprised me, Supervisor, when you started talking about grocery stores. How can this plan dictate what type of store or retail unit can go on a certain plot of land. I've never heard of such. That's like saying to me, let's put a Crate and Barrel here because we all want to buy Crate and Barrel items. How can you say, let's put a grocery store here? I didn't know that land could be designated for a type of retail.
Well, Marcia, that's why the proposal does not try to do that. It encourages, but
Encourage.
Well, certainly in terms of the layout of sites and proposed development that comes forward, sometimes, oftentimes actually, there is, and part of it is designated retail space in these new developments. The older developments all have the same thing too. So making sure that such retail is most amenable to a grocery store requirements is one way to do that. Some of this is actually happening even without changes in the comprehensive plan. I mean, one of the things we all hear from folks that build and run grocery stores is the need for enough people around them in order to make a grocery function. I mean, we've seen, unfortunately, in Town Center, we've seen a grocery store go away there. In Lake Ann, many years ago, we've seen that. And the idea here is not to, in all these places, add a bunch of new residential so that grocery stores would be market eligible, but frankly, to coordinate with developers and encourage healthy food opportunities, even if it maybe isn't a full-fledged grocery store in all areas of Reston. And I think it's also important to note, this part of the retail sector is changing. I mean, if you look and see what some companies are trying to do, and I don't mean just like food delivery, but that's a piece of it, but also just the distribution and different nodes for groceries and smaller groceries. And this is kind of one of those things that is in flux in the market. And I think this could and hopefully will provide a framework where Reston could be at the forefront of ensuring that everyone in Reston has convenient access to healthy food.
I just note something, you've got Wegmans coming shortly. That's a dramatic impact on the Reston market. At Lake Ann, you've got a minor food store there that most of you probably wouldn't even put on a list, but they sell a good line of meat products, and they actually sell things that you don't find in the normal convenience store, which I don't count as grocery stores. So it's something that bears, again, further watching and further work.
Yeah, and it's also important to note, and I'm glad everybody here, we've been talking about the primary use and function of a comprehensive plan, but comprehensive plans also guide public facility investments. So, there could at some point be community health related investments that the public sector needs to make as well. So, but that's a great point, John, about not everything is a traditional, big box grocery store, so.
And the second point was that convenience stores, in terms of nutrition, probably shouldn't count too
Yeah.
high.
Any other further questions, Marcia or Michael or Fatima? Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming, especially thank you to the county staff for the presentation. The Department of Planning and Development will be sending out a press release today, and which will also include information on the community meetings. I will get those to you ASAP so that you can include those. These are not all the meetings. We anticipate there'll be additional meetings, but this will at least get the conversation started. I think there's about 7 of them. So just wanted to let you know.
I do have one more. Do you have headshots of everyone so I'm not screenshotting your images? You might look better if you have fun.
Or not so well.
Right. We have lots of pictures of Reston if you like to use those and maps.
Well,
So,
the speakers are kind of key to this presentation.
sure. Okay. Well, why don't you send me a list of pictures that you're looking for and I can get those to you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, probably St. Clair, John.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Great.
And this
Anything else?
wonderfully presented.
Well, I'm sure, hopefully you all will be able to come out to one of the community meetings too, or watch it virtually.
And hey, I just got to remind everybody, it's Reston, so you will hear different opinions. And that's okay. That is okay. I look forward to that.
Thank
You
you.
didn't get them in 58 meetings?
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.
I hope that was helpful, John.
That's a lot.
Okay, good. No, thank you.
Nicely done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Here's
Yeah.
a printout of the news release. It'll be up on the county site later today, but that's